Hello, and thank you for joining me. I'm Frank. For years, we've been taught to look for the red flags when installing a new app. Does it want access to our camera, our contacts, our location? We check the permissions, and if it asks for nothing, we feel safe. But what if I told you that assumption is now dangerously outdated? In the next few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to a new security threat called Pixnapping. First, I'll explain how this attack shatters our old safety rules by stealing your most sensitive data, like two-factor authentication codes, without asking for a single permission. Then, and most importantly, I'll lay out 3 clear, actionable rules you can follow to not only defend against this threat, but to fundamentally upgrade your online security for the future.
Now, let's examine the alarming vulnerability that affects the security blanket we thought we had with modern smartphones. Pixnapping, a clever name for a scary and stealthy attack. It has been demonstrated on high-end Android phones, including the Google Pixel and even the Samsung Galaxy S25 mentioned in the research. The name hints at what it does: stealing sensitive personal data. This could be chat messages or location timelines. But the big one, the one that brings urgency to this, is two-factor authentication, 2FA codes. This isn't a theoretical vulnerability. The research shows this data theft can happen in less than 30 seconds. That 30-second mark is often a hard deadline for the attacker, because most 2FA codes expire right around then. But here is the real kicker, the security bombshell that grabbed my attention. The malicious app used to pull this off needed 0 standard system permissions. 0. It doesn't ask for location access, storage access, or camera pop-ups. None of the things we've been trained for years to watch out for. It just completely sidesteps the standard app isolation model, which is the idea that one app can't just peek into another app's data. This is the very bedrock of Android security, the concept that apps are, quote, sandboxed. While it's technically true that apps are sandboxed from direct access, like reading another's memory, Pixnapping shows this assurance can be undermined according to the paper of the studying. The app isn't asking for permission, it's inferring the data. Let's paint a picture of how this happens, as it starts innocently enough. Imagine you're browsing the Play Store and find a cool utility or a fun-looking game. You do your due diligence and check the permissions it asks for. You see maybe just basic network access, nothing scary. Thinking it's safe, you install it. Meanwhile, that app sits quietly in the background, just waiting. It has already done some homework, scanning your device to see what other apps you have installed and looking for specific targets, like your banking app, WhatsApp, or the classic target, Google Authenticator. The moment comes when you need to log into your bank or grab that 2FA code. You launch Google Authenticator. That's the trigger. The malicious app sees that specific activity start and springs into action. The clock starts ticking immediately. The attacker knows they have about 30 seconds before that code changes, so it's a race against time. The malicious app even uses the phone's system clock to try and sync up, starting its attack right when a new 30-second code appears to maximize that window. The research is chilling. These attacks often win this critical race against time. On a Google Pixel 6, the attack successfully obtained the full 6-digit code, a staggering 73% of the time. Even more concerning, the average time for this exploit was just 14.3 seconds, well within that 30-second window. This forces you to rethink how this is possible, and how we end up falling for that initial app install. The reason is that we've been trained to look for that list of permissions. We look for red flags like requests for our camera, contacts, or location. That training has ironically become a weakness here. Because the Pixnapping app asks for none of those scary permissions, we instinctively classify it as safe. It sails right under our mental radar. The absence of a warning becomes a sign of safety. You trust it because it doesn't seem to want anything sensitive. You think, what harm can a simple calculator app do if it asks for nothing? But the harm is hidden, subtle, and exploits an often overlooked vulnerability. It's not a direct flaw, like reading the screen buffer from memory, which is blocked. Instead, it's exploiting this side channel. The app isn't reading the pixels. It's inferring them by measuring tiny side effects of how the phone's hardware works. Specifically, it measures how long it takes the graphics processor, the GPU, to do certain things. This type of attack is evolving, becoming increasingly sophisticated and harder to detect. While not entirely new, it's reminiscent of the GPU.zip attack from 2023, which also involved the GPU stealing visual data. GPU.zip used similar timing side channels on the graphics processor to leak pixels from web browsers. The common thread here is that fast internal hardware operations, like drawing graphics on your screen, can unintentionally leak information through tiny variations in how long they take. Ultimately, the very speed and efficiency of our phone hardware can, ironically, be turned against us in these sophisticated attacks. So how does Pixnapping actually work? The researchers, Alan Linghao Wang and Ricardo Pacanella, laid out 3 clear steps that all hinge on measuring frame rendering times. Step 1 is called invoke and prepare. Here's where the malicious app makes its first move, but it does it in a way that looks completely normal. It uses everyday Android features, the same ones any regular app relies on to open screens or switch between apps. With these built-in tools, the malicious app quietly tells a target app, let's say Google Authenticator, to open up and show its screen. That forces the sensitive data, like your two-factor code, to appear in plain view. Once that happens, those pixels are sent through Android's display system, what we call the rendering pipeline, where everything that appears on your screen passes through. Now the target app is on screen, but the attacker still can't look at it directly. That's where step 2 comes in, graphical operations. The malicious app leans on more ordinary Android features, the ones apps use to draw and paint on the screen or place invisible layers over other apps. It doesn't draw anything obvious you'd notice. Instead, it performs tiny, precise graphical actions aimed at the exact spots on the screen where it expects the two-factor code numbers to appear. Here's the clever bit. Those tiny drawing actions take slightly different amounts of time depending on the color of the pixel they touch. So by carefully timing how long those drawing commands take, the malicious app can infer whether a given pixel is light or dark. In other words, whether it's part of a background or part of a number, without ever seeing the image itself. Think of it like gently tapping different parts of a painting and listening to the sound each tap makes. You don't see the brushstrokes, but the sound tells you something about what's underneath. The app never reads the pixels directly. It simply measures timing differences and uses that timing as a clue to reconstruct which digits are displayed. This all leads to step 3, which is called measure time and infer. And this is the really clever part. The malicious app starts to carefully measure time. It measures the tiny differences. We're talking milliseconds for the phone to process information at each exact pixel location where the code should be. Here's the trick. If the operation is super fast, the app just assumes, okay, that pixel was white. That's just the background. But if the operation is even a fraction of a second slower, it infers, aha, that pixel wasn't white. That must be part of a number. So it just does this rapidly, over and over, for all the pixels in that little area. It builds up a picture. It knows which pixels are background white and which ones are foreground non-white, enough to perfectly reconstruct all 6 digits of the code. It's basically building a screenshot without ever seeing it. It's an inferred screenshot, built one tiny pixel at a time, based purely on these timing leaks. And, of course, they had to be fast. To get that average steal time down to just 14.3 seconds, that required serious optimization. They had to reduce their timing samples and cut wait times down to just 70 milliseconds. All just to make sure they could grab the code inside that critical 30-second window. Pixnapping. 3 rules to protect yourself. This is a genuinely sophisticated, spycraft-level attack. So this is clearly a serious threat. What can we actually do about it? The research points to 3 key, practical rules. Rule 1. Prioritize system updates. This seems obvious, but it's critical here. Google has acknowledged this vulnerability. It's CVE 2025485561. They released a patch in the September Android security update that partially mitigates it. That September patch fixed some of the specific ways the malicious app could invoke the target app, but the core timing leak itself wasn't fully addressed then. An additional patch specifically targeting the timing side channel was scheduled for the December Android security bulletin. The message is loud and clear. Update your Android device. Check your security patch level now, especially if you have a Pixel or newer Samsung. If you're not on the December patch yet, you might still be vulnerable. Rule 2. Critical app vigilance. This one goes against the old advice. The old rule was to check the permissions. The new rule has to be to treat every app install with suspicion, even if it asks for 0 permissions. That assumption, no permissions means safe, is broken. You have to be much more critical about what you install and limit unnecessary installs. The Pixnapping app needed none. Rule 3. Upgrade your authentication. This feels like the most powerful long-term defense. We, collectively, need to move away from code-based multi-factor authentication. This means stopping reliance so heavily on those time-based one-time passwords, TOTP, from apps like Google Authenticator, and definitely stop using SMS codes. Pixnapping shows that even app-based codes can be stolen indirectly. Phishing attacks get them easily too. They're just not robust enough anymore. The clear alternative and the winner here is FIDO2 authentication. You might know it as Passkeys, or as using physical hardware security keys, like YubiKeys. Passkeys essentially tie your login to your device's secure hardware. There's no short code to steal or phish. When you log in, your device performs a cryptographic challenge response directly with the website. It's much faster, actually easier for the user, and vastly more secure. The study has showed it painless and much harder to phish. Pixnapping. What should we do? This vulnerability is a stark demonstration. Code-based MFA, whether TOTP or SMS, just isn't the gold standard anymore. If it can be inferred by timing pixels, it's not truly secure against motivated attackers. This needs to be a wider conversation, requiring collective action. So share this video with your family and friends. We, together, is the real thing to commit to protect our online safety and privacy. What we should do. We need to raise awareness and put pressure on companies, especially banks and other services that are slow to adopt better methods, to stop treating easily phished or inferred codes as good enough. They should be offering FIDO2 and passkey support. Relying solely on codes when much better tech exists should honestly be seen as negligent now. We need to demand better from the services we use. Consumers have power here. Start asking for passkey support and choose services that offer it. This leaves us with a final, provocative thought to chew on. Remember how the attack had a 73% success rate on the Google Pixel 6? Well, the researchers explicitly stated they couldn't leak the 2 FA codes on the Samsung Galaxy S25 within the 30-second window. Why? Because of significant noise in the timing measurements on that specific hardware. This means the exact phone model makes a huge difference. One phone's internal timing is just naturally noisier or more variable, making the side channel harder to read. This raises a huge, unsettling question. Why should the physical quirks of one device model versus another determine whether a serious security vulnerability is exploitable? It means security isn't even uniform across the same OS if the hardware underneath differs enough. So let's end with that call to action. Take 5 minutes after this. Go through your most critical online accounts, your Google account, your main email, your bank. Check their security settings. See which ones offer FIDO2 or passkey support. And if they offer it, enable it now. Make that switch away from code-based 2FA wherever you possibly can.
So, just to quickly recap what we've covered today. We started by looking at a critical new problem, a threat called Pixnapping, that completely changes our understanding of app safety. I showed you how it can steal sensitive information, like your login codes, even when an app asks for 0 permissions. And then, once we understood the threat, we pivoted to the solution. I laid out 3 specific actionable rules you can start using immediately. By the end of our time, you haven't just learned about a new risk, you now have the tools to defend yourself and make your online life more secure. So, as we close, remember this. Threats like Pixnapping remind us that digital safety isn't just about technology, it's about awareness. You now have the tools to protect yourself,
your data, and your privacy. Stay alert, stay informed, and stay secure. I'm Frank. See you next time.